This week on Brian Ross Investigates, the president, the Playmate, and the Crucifix. When Donald Trump bought this Beverly Hills mansion, he insisted the seller include religious artifacts from a shrine that belonged to the seller's late mother.
That it meant everything to him, that he needed this shrine.
But the religious items ended up in the hands of Playboy Playmate Karen McDougal as a gift from the Donald, she says.
Donald had given me those items personally. He thought they were amazing gifts, and he thought about me.
Trump has denied he had an affair with the Playmate. But do the gifts tell yet another story of untruths and betrayal?
It absolutely shocked me and horrified me. I feel betrayed.
Plus, the Spymasters, the new book on the CIA and the men and one woman who have run America's fabled spy agency. And this week's winners and losers in the media. Tucker Carlson makes the list once again. See if you agree with the choice by the editors of Mediaite.
The mayor's office claims emails suggesting a cover-up were taken out of context.
From the Law and Crime Trial Network, this is Brian Ross Investigates. Good evening, and thank you for joining us, and welcome to our viewers on Facebook Live. I'm Brian Ross, joined tonight by my colleague at Law and Crime, Rhonda Schwartz. And Rhonda, we begin with the story of the president, the Playmate, and the Crucifix. New details about a gift that apparently Mr. Trump gave to Karen McDougal, the former Playmate, during what she says was a long 10-month affair. Mr. Trump has denied the affair, but she has come forward with new details to talk about what was going on. As you recall, 4 years ago, she was paid $150,000 not to talk about the affair.
That's right, Brian. Karen McDougal was caught up in the National Enquirer's now infamous catch and kill operation, but she sued to regain her voice. And tonight she agreed to answer questions about new information we've learned about some gifts Donald Trump gave her.
That's right. We reached out to her to confirm the story we heard about these highly unusual gifts.
It's in Beverly Hills, in a high-profile area. It's right across the street from the Beverly Hills Hotel. My family and I have lived there for decades. My mother passed away in 2006. And so I was selling the house for the estate. One day, my phone rang. It was Donald Trump. And I was shocked. Well, hello? Okay. The bottom line is he was very personable and very fast. We concluded the transaction in a matter of under 5 minutes. We met right in the middle and bang, bang, done. The next day we met him at the house in Beverly Hills. And we met there and showed him around, and he loved the home.
Richard Cavalli's mother, Mary, who died at the age of 93, was a devout Catholic and had a small shrine in her bedroom with religious artifacts surrounding photos of friends who had died. Before he left, he saw the shrine, my mother's shrine in her bedroom, and he was really, he told me it was really important to him, that it meant everything to him, that he needed this shrine. And I was really good. I thought, wow, this man is really, he's quite a guy. He's really religious too. He's a successful businessman, very religious. And there were certain things that were dear to me that I didn't want to part with because they were things that I lived with every day. So we came to terms on a few pieces, which he took. And he said, I need to take these pieces today. I need them on my plane when I go back to New York, and I need them right now. And he said, otherwise, it's a deal breaker. So he said, okay. So he had his people pick up those pieces. And I thought, wow. And I was telling people, this is amazing. I had no idea he was so religious. But Trump had other ideas for the woman's religious pieces. They somehow ended up in the hands of Karen McDougal, the former Playboy Playmate of the Year model, who says Trump gave them to her as they were in the middle of what she has called a passionate 10-month affair. We reached Karen McDougal by phone this week, along with her lawyer, Carol Heller. Karen, how did those items from that house in Beverly Hills, from the religious shrine,
end up in your hands?
Brian, back in 2006, 2007, during the relationship, Donald had given me those items personally because he said he was buying a house, and he wouldn't buy the house unless he got those religious items, and he gave them to me. They were something that he was considering as a gift for me because he knew my love of Jesus.
And so you were in the middle then of a relationship, and he gave them to you as a present.
Yes, he did.
And what did he say about them?
He said when I saw the shrine at this house that he was buying, he immediately thought about me, and he said he wasn't going to buy the house unless he had those items thrown in the deal. He was willing to walk away from the house, and he thought it was great because he knew my love of God, and he also, at the time, expressed his love of God, and he gave them to me and wanted to have them. He thought they were amazing gifts, and he thought about me.
And why was he buying the house? Do you know?
He was buying the house because it was right across the street from the Beverly Hills, and he had actually asked me to move into the house when it was done getting remodeled.
And what did you say to that?
You know, I didn't really think about it too much. I just kind of said, oh, that was sweet. That was nice, something along those lines. I didn't take it serious for myself because I didn't think that way. And I had my own place in Beverly Hills, so I didn't need to move into somebody else's house. It was very nice at the time, I guess, but no, I wasn't going to even consider moving into his house. No.
And Carol Heller, as a lawyer for Karen McDougal, what do you think is the import of this fact that Donald Trump gave these items to Karen?
It definitely proves he was thinking of her, and it was an incentive to get her to move into a house.
McDougal sent us these photos of some of the religious items she says Trump gave her and that she still has.
So we've sent you some pictures that we have. One shows this metal crucifix. Do you recognize the pictures?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. In fact, the crucifix was given to my mother long, long ago by my brother. My brother gave it to her, and she held it very dear.
So that's definitely from your house. That was your mother's?
Definitely, 100%, definitely. Absolutely.
And you gave that to Donald Trump?
Yes, I did.
Cavalli did not know where his mother's pieces had ended up until we told him.
He apparently then gave them to Karen McDougal, the former Playmate of the Year, with whom he was, according to her, having a lengthy 10-month affair.
Well, I had heard he had given them to someone else. I didn't hear Karen's name specifically until now. But it absolutely shocked me and horrified me. I felt betrayed. They meant a lot to me. They meant a great deal to me because I grew up seeing these pieces every day of my life on my mother's shrine. And I just lost my mother in 2006, 1 year before, so they were especially important. And I wouldn't have given even those few little pieces away to Mr. Trump had I known that they were going to go elsewhere.
Would you like these back?
Yes, if that's possible. I don't know what value they have to the young lady, but I would.
We'll ask her for sure.
You know, the message I can leave to Mr. Cavalli is I took care of the items. They went to a good home. I can tell they were loved and cherished. I did appreciate them. They were sweet. They were like something I'd see in my grandma's house. You know, what I thought was a beautiful gift in my eyes, as I'm learning, was actually a betrayal in somebody else's eyes. And for that, I feel bad. So if the man would like to have his mother's items back, they were sentimental. I understand. I have my own mother, and I would do anything to have some of her personal items, expensive or not. I'm willing to give them back to him if he'd like them back.
Trump sold the Beverly Hills house last year, and Rhonda Schwartz, what have we heard from the Trump organization about this story about the religious items?
Well, we've been told there's no truth to this and that there were no religious artifacts in the house or involved in the sale of the house. But Robert Cavalli and his family would strongly dispute that.
Without a doubt, and so would Karen McDougal. Well, thank you very much. And next week, we'll have more of our conversation with Karen McDougal about her relationship with Donald Trump. Coming up next, the CIA Spymasters, Inside the CIA with a great new book. We're joined by the author, Chris Whipple, when we come back. You're watching the Law and Crime Trial Network. And now to the CIA. CIA officers are trained to lie and to keep secrets, all in the national interest. Well, a new book, The Spymasters, attempts to get at the heart of the truth of the CIA and unearth some of those secrets. It's written by Chris Whipple. CIA directors shape history and the future. And Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Let me start at the very end, where you talk about Gina Haspel, the current CIA director, with a quote from someone saying she'd be a very good prison camp commandant. What did you mean by that?
Well, you know, Gina Haspel is an absolutely fascinating character to me, a mystery woman who flies under the radar. She came out of Kentucky, a Johnny Cash fan, and she cut her teeth as a covert operative in the back alleys of Africa. She then formed a relationship. Her mentor was the unlikeliest guy you could imagine, Jose Rodriguez, who was the architect of the whole enhanced interrogation program, infamously at CIA. But he became a kind of feminist mentor to her, encouraged her to go for the London station as at CIA, and the rest is history. She became CIA director, and her record, in my view, is really mixed. There were high hopes that she could be the rare person who could tell Donald Trump what he didn't want to hear, but I think she's really failed as the honest broker of information, both to Congress and to the American people. And I can give you many examples of that, but it's very difficult, as we all know, for anyone to tell Donald Trump hard truths.
A recurring theme throughout this book, Chris, is the importance of the CIA director's relationship with the president. That's really important. How do they all manage it, and how has she managed it, do you think?
You know, it's first of all, it's almost impossible to overstate the importance of the position of CIA director. The CIA director is the person we depend on to prevent another 9/11 or lethal pandemic. And it's almost, as you say, Brian, an impossible balancing act, because you have to tell the president hard truths, and at the same time, you have to have his ear. The CIA director commands an army of analysts and covert operatives and paramilitary warriors and lethal drones. But if you don't have a seat at the table with the president, the whole enterprise is for naught. And this has been true. Richard Helms, for example, famously tried to persuade LBJ that the bombing of North Vietnam was ineffective. LBJ would have none of it. Now fast forward to Gina Haspel, who has her own difficulties telling Donald Trump what he doesn't want to hear.
A question for you, Chris, from Rhonda Schwartz. Rhonda?
What is it, Chris, with the CIA's obsession with Fidel Castro? They've tried to assassinate him. They've tried to invade Cuba. What's up there?
Good question. It had a lot to do with Bobby Kennedy. One of the great things about the book was the time I got to spend with Cynthia Helms, the widow of the quintessential CIA director, Richard Helms. And Cynthia told me, and these are the moments in the book that I love, that where I really try to humanize the directors. Helms would come home at night and tell her that he had lash marks on his back, not literally, but figuratively, because Bobby Kennedy had hectored him all day long about getting rid of Fidel Castro by fair means or foul. The Kennedys were obsessed with that. And the other thing that she told me that I found just kind of poignant was, you know, Chris, she said, they were all asked to do things they shouldn't have done. And God knows Helms was a flawed character. He did cross the line and he committed illegal acts for LBJ. MH Chaos, MK Ultra, all kinds of things. And of course, at the end of the day, when the crunch came, he stood up to Richard Nixon and refused to participate in the Watergate cover-up.
And Chris, you make a good point, I think, throughout the book that whatever the CIA has done and their failures all along their career, their history of the CIA, it's usually done at the behest of the president, right?
That's right. And one former director told me, Brian, that there will always be a CIA. You could never abolish it because presidents would then have no one to blame. There's a famous lament at Langley, and it is, in this town, there are only policy successes and intelligence failures. And of course, the CIA was blamed for 9/11, but I have chapter and verse in my chapter on the walk up to 9/11 in which George Tenet and his lieutenants went over to the White House, pounded the table and told Condi Rice we had to go on a war footing now. This was in July of 2001. And yet they were blamed, which is not to say that the CIA hasn't had plenty of screw-ups and debacles over the years, but usually it's because the president asked them to do something.
All right. Well, Chris Whipple, thank you very much. This is a great book. I really enjoyed it. It's a terrific read. Once again, terrific work for a former colleague, Chris Whipple. Thank you so much.
Brian, great to see you.
Coming up, the winners and losers this week in the media as chosen by the editors at Mediaite. Tucker Carlson once again on the list. When we come back, you're watching the Law and Crime Trial Network. Continuing now with this week's winners and losers in the media, as chosen by the editors at Mediaite. And we're joined by Aidan Mclaughlin, who's the editor-in-chief of Mediaite, which, like the Law and Crime Trial Network, is owned by the Dan Abrams media empire. Aidan, thank you so much for joining us again today. And tonight's first loser is Tucker Carlson, once again on your list.
Yeah,
the mayor
he's
pulled that story off its website. The station is no longer reporting that the mayor's office covered up the coronavirus numbers. It's now been reported that some of those numbers were actually put out in August, so the public didn't seem to know about them. The mayor's office claims emails suggesting a cover-up were taken out of context. So we don't know the truth about that because we don't have all the emails, but we wanted to keep you up to date on what was happening there, and of course we'll bring you more.
So, Aidan, there's a story he's reporting based on a local station which completely retracted the story, and yet Tucker Carlson doesn't seem to want to buy that.
Right. So let me just give you a little context on this. Last Thursday, Tucker Carlson covered this local Nashville story, which had alleged that the Nashville mayor's office was covering up good news about the coronavirus, about its spread in bars and restaurants. And Tucker Carlson covered this at the beginning of his show. He covered it pretty extensively and cited the story as conclusive proof that leaders, particularly Democratic ones, were lying to people about good news about the coronavirus because they somehow wanted to keep power over their population. Now, I watched this Tucker Carlson segment on Thursday night, and it didn't make a lot of sense because obviously mayors don't want bars and restaurants in their cities to be closed for no reason. They want their cities to have functioning economies. But anyway, the story that Tucker Carlson was basing his commentary on ended up getting debunked and retracted by Fox 19, the outlet that first reported it. And it got, Fox and Friends, which also covered the story on Monday, apologized for covering it. Tucker Carlson comes on his show and instead of apologizing or correcting, says, it presents it as an update, says that it was retracted because of pressure from the mayor's office, which doesn't really make any sense because the mayor's office was putting pressure on the outlet to begin with. So it's unclear why now they would be retracting the story. And basically said there's still questions about whether or not there's a cover-up. He's now alleging a cover-up about the cover-up. So it was a sort of pretty embarrassing display from Tucker Carlson. And I think genuinely he's misleading his viewers about what this report said and about what the outlet was retracting.
Absolutely. And as we all know, Aidan, journalism 101, the most important rule is if you make a mistake, and everyone does, retract it immediately, set the record straight. He doesn't seem to want to do that if it cuts across his theory of what's going on.
Exactly. It's kind of a really disturbing place for a journalistic enterprise to be. You know, you can have your concerns about Fox News, but it's a news outlet, and typically they're good at correcting things that they get wrong. It's really not a good sign that when a story has been debunked and retracted completely, that Tucker Carlson is misleading his viewers about that and refusing to correct it himself.
Let's go to the winner, Ali Veshy of MSNBC, who was hit by a rubber bullet covering a police protest, and yet the President of the United States thought that was a wonderful thing. Listen to this.
All right, guys, I got hit. Yeah, I got hit. Hold on.
I remember this guy, Welchie. He got hit on the knee with a canister of tear gas, and he went down. He didn't. He was down. My knee. Nobody cared. These guys didn't care. They moved him aside, and they just walked right through. It was the most beautiful thing.
A wonderful thing, apparently, from the president's point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree that saying anyone getting hit by a rubber bullet, calling it a wonderful thing is really bad, particularly for the president to be doing about a member of the press. Ali Velshi, President Trump mispronounced his name there, but his name is Ali Velshi. He's a host at MSNBC, and for the past year, he's really been out in the field a lot, covering the protests against police brutality, covering the coronavirus, and a series of other things across America. And while he was covering these protests against police brutality, he got shot by a rubber bullet. It was a pretty staggering moment and a sign of what reporters have to go through in the field, and it's embarrassing that the president is celebrating it.
And Ali Veshy, one of the hardest working people, certainly at MSNBC or on TV at all. Aidan, Mclaughlin, thank you so much for being here. Thanks to all of you for watching. And thanks again to the team at Law and Crime for getting us on the air and getting us off the air.